All right,
All right.
Cody Smith.
Hang on.
What's up, dude? It's all good. Welcome to the Freeheel Life podcast, my friend. Good to see you on finally.
Good to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're making this work. So I can't believe I actually got you on this thing, which is the crazy. It's like kind of weird that I'm actually doing this. You're actually on, and here you are in all your glory.
Glory is a strong word.
It's glorious. All right. Well, let's kick this off, because part of why I wanted to have you on, we've been good friends for a long time. We met through Telemark. So part of why I wanted you on for my own selfish reasons was to kind of connect the dots on some of these stories and other people I've had on some of my own personal history. And but I want to give people sort of your background, like where you're from, and tell the people a little bit where you grew up and stuff. Like where are you from? Fill everybody in on this.
I am from Colorado. My dad was a ski patroller at Aspen Highlands, so that's kind of that's really where I grew up, was up on the hill. Lived in Carbondale, and yeah, just got to ski a ton as a kid. It was rad.
Is that, yeah, because you guys, did you live in Elgibel? Was that where you grew up, or was it in Carbondale, or did you guys always live in that same house?
Yeah, I mean, Basalt, Carbondale area.
Yeah, okay. And then your dad was always patrolling up at Highlands then.
Yep. Yeah, till I was like 18. He was a patroller up there, so.
And then I guess, like, when you were growing up there, like, was the ski cult, like, so basically were you just skiing since day one? Was that just kind of like the family thing? Because I didn't know you back then, so I guess I don't really know that part of your history. Like, was that just like kind of your dad? Because you're actually, funny enough, we figured that out, that my mom went to high school with your dad. Is that right?
Yep.
In Denver.
And my grandmother was your second grade teacher.
Yeah, which is super weird. Yeah, I totally forgot about that part of the story, which is super weird that we didn't know that until much later on, that Mrs. Smith was my teacher in elementary in Denver, and ends up being your grandma. And I have no idea how that came together, but super crazy. Anyway, so I guess, when did your dad move up to Highlands then? Like in the 80s, 70s, 80s?
Yeah, my parents met in Fort Collins, and they moved to Basalt in, I think, 83. And then briefly back to Fort Collins. I was born, and then they moved back to the Valley when I was like 6 months old. So,
So basically no one lived in Aspen?
We never did. Like, my folks
No, I
worked
mean,
up
like,
there,
but the population was like nothing in 83, I would assume. It was probably pretty small.
Yeah, I think it was, I'm sure it was a few thousand people.
Well, like, I guess kind of like so when did your whole Telemark background, did it start did you Telemark ski before you went to Colorado Rocky Mountain School? Because that's part of what I wanted to talk about, was where you went to high school. And because I've had some other people on that went to that school that ended up doing a lot of stuff in the Telemark world. But I guess, where did you come across the Telemark stuff?
Well, my dad started doing it like probably like early or mid 90s. And the elementary school that I went to, we did a lot of outdoor stuff, and some of it was, like backcountry. It wasn't really like we were on, Nordic skis with metal edges, basically. So we got a little bit of exposure in like third and fourth grade, out in the backcountry. And then I think in like fifth or sixth grade, I was able to get my hands on some boots and started doing it kind of part time. And then by the time I was 13 or 14, I was full time broken binding.
13 or 14. I'm trying to think because how old are you, dude? I always forget. How much younger are you than me? What?
7 years.
So I'm trying to think like so like junior high. Well, I guess so. Did that lead? Is that why you ended up going to Colorado Rocky Mountain School? Was because of the Telemark program, or like you just went there because of the academics?
Well, it certainly wasn't my academics. I can tell you that much. Yeah, no, it
You're
was.
such a shining star in the classroom, dude. Come on.
Yeah, talk to KO about that. Yeah, it was definitely. It was academic, outdoors. I was super fortunate that it was right down the street, and they had some spots for day students. So I got one of those spots, and it just happened to be that they have like the raddest Freeheel guru around with KO, so it
Yeah,
worked out
and
nicely.
KO I've had on the podcast, and I mean I don't know how to explain KO to people from your perspective, because I've always had I've known him through you guys over the years and been really fortunate to get to know him more from the outside looking in. But how would you explain KO as a person?
I mean, he's an inspiring guy. He's got an ability to connect with young people that most teachers don't have. I don't want to throw him under the bus too much, but he is basically a man child, but very responsible. He's the most fun loving and caring person that I came across at that school. I mean, he is still a good friend. He played his banjo at my wedding, and just a solid guy, and wants to see kids succeed. And it just so happens that he does that through skiing and taking people to rad places, doing geology courses. And I mean, he's just, yeah, he does it all.
Yeah, I think inspiring's. Yeah, I mean, because I've only known him through the Telemark stuff. Obviously, he does a lot of other stuff, like you said, music and teaching and whatnot. But that was always something that struck me with the Telemark team. One, there was a Telemark team, which was super unique in the sense that here's like an academic school, and then all of you guys. I mean, there was obviously levels within that youth program of like maybe who was the quote unquote best, but I always felt like the caliber of like all the kids was always like incredible. Like I could never figure out how everyone was such a good Telemark skier. And also you guys have like impeccable style, and that's what's interesting is there's kind of generations of KO and of like his program, but you guys all have like this like very effortless style of how you guys Telemark ski, which I don't know if it has to be intentional. I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, do you see that when you watch other people that went to that school when they ski, that they have a similar, it's not identical, but like a similar way of Telemark skiing?
Yeah. I think KO is not a traditionalist, and I mean that in like the best way possible. Like we were allowed to ski how we wanted to ski. The biggest thing that we did there was just fun. Like that was the only kind of like, it sounds super cheesy, but that was like the requirement, right? It's like looking back on it, it's like you just had to have a good time. You had to let go, and KO was just like the best facilitator of fun on the hill. And I think it let it, like even kids who had never been on skis before or had very limited experience, they would get really good really fast, because I think it was just like, it was just this mob mentality, and it didn't matter, you know, how much you skied or not. It was just like, it was a very kind of family feel. Um, and I think people were just encouraged to like, do their thing. And when you watch KO ski, it's hard not to like want to emulate that, right? He's like probably the most beautiful telemark skier out there, in my opinion.
Now, the other thing that was cool about that group, like especially your era, it's like, because I'm thinking like, what year did you start high school? You think 2000?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, I think a lot of your group, there was a lot of park skiing going on. But the other thing is, you guys were all like really good, just big mountain skiers too. That's what's so crazy is like the well-roundedness of that group. It just was like air awareness, like jumping. I mean, come to think of it like that, I remember coming across pictures or like where you guys would just take that crazy CRMS bus somewhere and you guys would like build jumps. Like that was
Yep.
like, hey, we're just going to go build a jump. And there's like 20 kids like just jumping on some side hill.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was my senior year. Uh, so there were teams that were considered like, competitive teams, and then there was more like recreational stuff at CRMS. And if you were on a recreational program, it was 2 days a week of active curriculum, and then 2 days a week where you had like a work crew. So you'd be like, you know, in the forge building stuff for the dining room, or, like digging post holes. There was lawn. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff. But then the competitive teams were 4 days a week. So especially that last year that I was there, Monday through Thursday we were on skis, and 2 of those days were, half days up on the hill. And then the other 2 days, we were doing dry land, which a lot of times was like dragging a rail, out to the Nordic facility and like building a drop in, and, just like sessioning a rail with, like 20, 30 kids for, 2 hours, and just like chaos, but like some of the best times.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And that translated too, because I remember like then you guys are around. I guess just yeah, that the round well-roundedness of that whole thing. I love how you're talking about it, because it really, again, outside looking in, it always seemed like so organic. It wasn't like we're making a park team or we're making a big mountain team. It's like you guys always were having fun, but it obviously was like an environment where you guys were like pushing each other, because everyone kept getting better, and then and then you guys, I think being around Snowmass and Aspen back then too, like you guys obviously had access to jumps that were
Yeah.
probably a little higher quality than a lot of other places back then.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the biggest thing was just like, we had a super diverse crew. Just the nature of the school, like we had lots of international students. We had kids from all over the country, and like, there was just like, um, it was just super cool. Like it was a great environment to be in at that age, and especially with KO just kind of like, leading the charge. And um, but yeah, like we skied a lot of park, we skied a lot of big mountain. All the competitions at that point were, for the most part, big mountain. Like we entered a few. I mean, I guess we had nationals a couple years. That was a park skiing competition, but most of the stuff we did was big mountain. And I think, like when I was there, I think the program grew a lot from, even the time that I started to, like I went back and was able to coach for a season, I think '07 or '08, somewhere in there. Um,
And it was cool to see the progression of the program. Like I think KO, it was all fun, but he definitely took it seriously, and like to see the evolution of like how he was developing like the coaching aspect was really cool. But it was still just it was like the most fun you could have.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I was trying to think too. So like, did the video? I was trying to remember the unparalleled thing happened before you got there, right? Where Bones came out and filmed like Mancini and some of those guys. Is that right, or was that during your early time there?
Yeah, I mean, so Max and like Robbie McMahon, they graduated the year before I started, so we didn't really cross paths uh, like at CRMS. I think, yeah, because I think that was the first unparalleled, and then my I think my freshman year, so it would have been like 2000, maybe, was unparalleled too. And we went to Breck. I remember we drove to Breck in KO's little uh, Toyota Tacoma, like five of us stuffed into this little thing. And we went and shot it in Breck with Bones. Ben Dolance was there. That was the first time I met him. Uh, there was a couple other folks there. I don't remember who, but
And that was kind of your first I guess introduction to sort of like the movie aspect going on. And I was just going to mention, like, for those of you that haven't listened to any podcasts on the Unparalleled stuff, I mean, Unparalleled were these 16 millimeter movies that Josh Bones Murphy was making, and there's four of them, but I mean, they were really influential in terms of like showing the progress of a lot of this more free ride oriented telemark skiing, especially like that early 2000s era. And yeah, I always thought that was kind of cool how he linked up with KO and kind of some of those, yeah, like you said, Mancini and Robbie McMahon. And yeah, just, I mean, it's funny kind of looking when you watch those videos, like how rough maybe some of the tricks were, but it's like it wasn't like that off course from like Alpine, right? Like it's like they're pretty much
yeah,
doing the same. Like I felt like it was pretty even keel at that point, you know?
yeah. I mean, there just was, there were so few people doing it. But I mean, yeah, like when did the 1080 come out? Like late
I think
90s,
90.
98, something like that.
Yeah, I want to say like 90, 98 or 99.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that was like, in my mind, that's kind of like when things got serious. Like they started building terrain parks and they started building skis with that you could ski backwards on, that kind of stuff. And like those, yeah, like Robbie and Max, like they were right there. There just weren't. I mean, there've never been a lot of telemark skiers, and there just weren't that many people doing that stuff. So it was super cool to see, just figuring it out. It's not like they had anybody to show them what to do.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, because I guess, did you ever have a pair of Solomon 1080s yourself?
Not the first gen. I had the blue ones, the second gen.
That's funny. I think
Yeah.
I brought that video. Do you remember the VHS tape that came with the skis?
I don't know. I don't think I got one.
Have you never seen one of those? Oh,
No.
it's rad. It literally, it's like I think I still have it. I need to see. I'm sure it's online somewhere. I'll have to send it to you because it's like an instructional video,
Nice.
and basically it's like, here's how you do the Japan grab, you know, and then it's got like sort of like breaks down mute grab, Japan grab, uh, and because I remember it because there was one called a Huntini, I think is how you pronounce it, and I was always like, oh, we got to bring that one back. It's like mute Daffy or something. It didn't survive, I think, amongst the the I don't know, the evolution of time, but yeah, there's some funny stuff in there.
Yeah.
Some Canadian Air Force good stuff. But Okay. So you talked a little bit about the competitions. Like, so basically, like that's kind of how we met. I ended up meeting you guys at a big mountain competition in Jackson Hole, which I think that Jackson Hole competition. It's funny because that thing has come up countless times for various reasons. That was a wild one, right? Because I've had I remember I had Brian Mail on, who was early unparalleled guy. I think he was more on the organizing side at that point, and I mean we were talking more about sort of the the bad crazy stuff that happened at that comp where people were tumbling off of massive cliffs. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, tell me what you remember, because you guys are in high school. I mean, you guys rolled deep. I mean, there had to be like, I mean, how many kids went to that competition that year?
I mean, we always had like, at least like 15, 20 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, that was a cool one to watch. I didn't even qualify for the finals in that one, so I was spectating.
I don't think I did either. I think that was like one of the only comps I did, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it was rad to watch. Like, I think KO did really well at that one. And I mean, I remember like uh, Andy Jacobson. Somebody entered some like couloir or something switch because they got like hung up on some rocks and they just sent it. Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't remember that.
I remember. I think Nick DeVore did well at that one. He and KO were kind of like on a similar line. KO was a silent killer, man. We would, because he was our coach, but he always competed also, and he would throw down, like he would know that he had to throw down to beat one of his pupils, but he would like show you who was boss. Just that's great. He'd just like go a little bit bigger than you, or like, it was great.
I do remember that because I remember the DeVore. Yeah, because Nick was like a young kid. I mean, he couldn't have been that. Because he's younger than you, right?
No, he's a year older than I am.
Oh, he's a year older. Okay. Yeah. No, I remember that because I remember it was like a looker's left line that both of them took. Yeah. And I don't what was that thing called? Like toilet bowl or something? Or
yeah,
I can't remember.
Yeah, something.
I forget what the venue was called, but yeah, no, that was rowdy. There was a lot of good skiing going on. I mean, what do you remember about those big mountain comps? Because I think that's I always whenever I talk to people about those comps, like I was not skiing at that level, not even close. And I remember like some of the, you mentioned Andy Jacobson, Andy Rosenberg, a lot of these guys that those guys went on to make powder horrors, and you had the tough guy crew. I remember, and like Nick DeVore obviously like goes on to like do some of the craziest big mountain telemark skiing ever. I mean, like the level of skiing at those things was just so off the charts. It's almost hard to imagine now because it was like the field was deep too. I mean, I want to say there was like, I don't know, there had to be like 100 people. Like I can't imagine there was less than that, but maybe
big. Like they were like legit. I mean, I almost think that like the organizational side wasn't ready. Like it didn't quite match up with the level of skiing at the time. Like that was always a big thing at all those events, was like, the judging and this and that. And like, which looking back at it now, it's like, whatever, we were just fucking around and like having a great time. But there were some folks who were really like laying it down too, and like, it would have been cool to see, like some real purses and stuff like that, like to compensate people for what they were doing. But at the same time, I think that's like, you know, it's like kind of also the coolest thing about telemark skiing is that it's never grown up. You know, I don't know if it ever will.
Probably not. But no, that's funny. Well, so like that like you and I meet, I don't quite remember, like I remember meeting you there. I don't really remember. I guess we stayed in touch because kind of the next time I remember maybe seeing you was at that, there was a thing called the Reno Tahoe Freeheel Open. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
There was, and I think you went out to film with, did you go film with Bones? I don't know. Take me from there, because I kind of want to piece together some of that whole thing, because that kind of leads into more like you and I linking up later on.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there was a day, when I went to shoot with Bones, though, that was in Utah. That was the Brighton comp. Would have been in like 02, I think. But yeah, I think I think I called you because I was coming to OR. Like maybe it might have even been the summer OR show, and I needed a place to crash, and you let me crash on your floor, and that was kind of like I don't know, that was like the first time we actually hung out, not, you know, just at the comps.
And you guys, I forgot, you guys had linked up. KO had kind of linked all you guys up with BD at that point too, which was like Tumis, Lasco had started working there, because it was kind of that era, right? Like you guys were all skiing like that green Havoc, kind of that era of BD skis, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, my junior year, he got me and Jack Tolan on the BD program, which was super funny. Like like they wanted, you know, they wanted some youth influence and like some, you know, some park skiers and stuff. And that ski was, you know, we went through a lot of them.
That was good maneuver, dude.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like a foam core, I think, on those skis?
We didn't give a shit. You know, it was like the coolest thing ever to, you know, get free skis. And
that's so funny.
We went out to like the media, or like, you know, the kind of the press launch for the Havoc. And yeah, we thought we were just like the shit. Jack and I, they had like a half pipe. I'm trying to remember if I think it was at the Canyons maybe. But they had a half pipe like at the bottom of the hill, and it was terrible. You know, it was like 4-foot walls. And Jack and I decided to like really change things up. Ooh, can you still see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. And we like straight lined the half pipe switch together. And
you guys didn't even hit the walls.
People were like cheering us on. They thought it was like the greatest thing ever. That's like you know, that was cool back then. Like it was so funny.
It's funny to think too, like, one, that Black Diamond had park skiers on Havocs, which you guys were like in the catalog too. Like there's like, I mean,
like went out and shot with Matt, and yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting to think about that, because yeah, the imagery was definitely unique. I mean, like I still have pictures of you doing like, you know, huge like switch 5 critical nose grabs on Havocs.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, because like if I look at a Havoc now, I definitely like, I don't think of like freestyle stuff, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But
Well, it was just, I mean, it wasn't the first time that had been attempted. I mean, K2, you know, we went through 1,000 pairs of the first gen piece pipes. They would delam like crazy. But we actually had my dad. We finally figured out that you could mount basically just an aluminum plate to the ski to keep them from ripping out. So we had the entire team skis at my house, and my dad just turned out a bunch of these aluminum plates that would go in there, and then we were had to rivet the tails and the tips, and we eventually the rivets started blowing out, so we were literally bolting them together with nuts and bolts. And so the Havoc was what it was. It was an evolution, but it was just a slow evolution.
yeah.
And
Well, I didn't mean to.
Technology's changed, so much.
No, for sure. No, I didn't mean to derail too much on that. I kind of had forgotten the BD thing. So go back. So you and Bones, you guys were filming at Brighton, and I guess that's what I was trying to think is I was just trying to kind of piece that together. Because did you end up being in Unparalleled 3? Did you have a part in that?
No, I didn't land anything that day. I might have made the crash seal.
Just burning up that 16 millimeter.
At one point after I don't know, 3 or 4 hits, I was hiking back up, and he's like, "Dude, this film is expensive. You got to land this stuff." And I was I don't know what, 15. And I didn't even really know it was happening like that. The night before or something, I basically was told that I was going out with those guys. And it was an amazing experience. I got to watch BJ Brewer do the the nostalgic double backflip in the Utah backcountry. So there, it was super cool. But I didn't make the cut on 3. I think the Lost season was well, that was the last one too, right? The Lost season. Unparalleled 4.
Oh, Lost season was 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been. Yeah, because I think that came out in 2004 or 5 after. Yeah. I guess I probably need to get better count of those, man.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of funny. You and I, we skied a few times, we hung out a few times, but it wasn't it wasn't full time. And then you basically were like, "Hey, we should start a film company." And I was like, "Cool."
Well, yeah, that's kind of, and that at some point, after that, Ben Dolans and Max Mancini started Falling Forward Films. Yep. And then you started you kind of went off with those guys on Chasing Home. And I always felt like that. When I look back, I think that totally fit you because their style, if you look at the soundtrack, those guys were way ahead of their time in terms of, I want to say, was it they had RJ, is it RJD2?
Mm-hmm.
And then Macklemore, and they had all these crazy, the soundtrack was so interesting and rad and super, all this independent music. They were shooting a lot on Super 8. And that, so that was probably around, I think Chasing Home was probably 2005-ish.
Yeah, because it was the year after I graduated high school.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Yeah, it would have come out 2005.
Yeah, and then Smoke and Mirrors was 2006.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
And you and I had linked up because I tried to kind of get in on it. I think the Smoke and Mirrors thing. And I remember hanging out with you in Seattle.
Yep.
And I guess, did you blow your knee that year?
Yep. That trip. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you blew your knee out. Anyways, yeah, so we had kind of like built that friendship like that year, and I don't know. At some point, I think you dumbly told me like, "Hey, dude, if you ever want to start a film company, I'm going to blame it on you," because I think I would have never had that idea, but I think you were sort of the creative type, and I was sort of like, "Yeah, I'll figure it out," and I was that side of it, and then freeheellife.com was kind of like that web zine at that point, and we had that. I remember, yeah, it was probably that same time around 2005-ish or 2000. Yeah, it would have been like 2005. So during that time, I made that whole Monster Squad thing. And I sponsored all the little kids that were on the cable forum.
Yep.
And then I was part of the Powder Horse group, and you were kind of part of the Falling Forward thing. And the Powder Horse had said, "Hey, we'll put out this segment with this Monster Squad group, like a conglomerate." And I'll never forget, because I was waiting tables at Hard Rock Cafe, and I got this call from the Powder Horse guys, and they're like, "We're not going to do this segment." And I was like, so pissed. I remember, because I'm like, I'm like at work, and I'm like, got my little flip phone sitting outside Hard Rock Cafe, and I'm just like, I was like, F that. I like hang up, and I call you, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, you want to start a film company?" And
I was
that was it.
I was sitting outside of physical therapy waiting for my mom to come pick me up. I was rehabbing my knee. Couldn't even walk. And you called me and you were like, "We should start a film company." And I was like, "Okay, I can't walk, but let's do it."
Totally. Which you did not live in the same city, so that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, so that was literally the catalyst of what becomes Lipstick Films. We didn't know what it was going to be called. Also, that idea was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to make this thing," even though none of us had filmed anything before. No one had really edited. I don't know. Like I always look back on that, and I think it was such an interesting experience, because then you move out and like live on my couch, and we didn't have the name for the little movie company until I think after you got out to Salt Lake, and I think it was your buddy Chad that came up with it, right? Is that the story? Because I'm sure people were like, "How the hell did you come up with Lipstick Films of all things?"
Yeah, Chaz.
Chaz, that's right.
I think it was because he came to Salt Lake. I don't know. I remember we were in one of our Subarus, and I remember Chaz being like, "You should call it Lipstick Films," and we were kind of like, "Yeah." Yeah, and then we had no idea what we were doing. We were like filming in like trailers and like public restrooms, like that shot of Chaz like writing Lipstick Films on the mirror. It was like some busted ass bathroom in Glenwood by the train tracks.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
No, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like you and we were so excited to sort of show, again, kind of taking it back. I mean, it's like we start filming in 2000, like 6-ish,
7,
because I think we put it out in 2007, right? Yeah. But yeah. So the park thing was still pretty new. I think we wanted to show. It's funny thinking back, because I think when I've talked to people now, people like look at what we were doing and they're like, "That seems so dumb. You guys were just like driving around looking for rails and shit to just jump off of and like land or whatever." Because if you go watch those segments, it's, there's definitely some big mountain segments in there, but a lot of it's just urban. It's like, I don't like. What do you remember? Because I want to hear your perspective on it. Is like how do you remember the mentality being like, okay, hey, we're gonna make a movie. Like, what were the ideas that you remember floating around? I mean, I know what the product ended up being. I'm just curious if you remember the talks around like what we were going to do or why?
I mean, I think in my mind, like the way that I remember it, it was less about like what we were going to do as much, and more about like what we didn't want, like what we knew we didn't want. You know, like we were whatever angsty little, you know, teenagers or young adults, and um, you know, yeah. For me, it was less about like what the finished product was going to be, and more about just like doing it different and just doing whatever we felt like doing. And I mean, it was, you know, like there was a ton of influence. Like that was, to me, that was kind of like the um, an interesting time in skiing, because you know you'd had like freestyle skiing had been around for a while at that point. Like it was maturing, or you know whatever you want to call it, um, beyond the point of just like, you know, these like park porn segments, you know, and it was like diversifying into urban skiing and all that kind of stuff. And I think we were like, we kind of wanted to do all of it, you know, and there was no definition of like what telemark skiing was in our minds. I don't think, you know, I think it was like, let's have a good time and, you know, maybe ruffle some feathers and see what happens.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it, man. It really seemed like, yeah, it definitely didn't seem like hey, let's create this business. Like it's funny almost thinking back, because I think over the years, even when we always reconnect and hang out, I'm always thinking like it was really like the energy of that experience was always what meant the most to me, because it really was us just trying to like express our whatever we were into, and didn't really have a whole lot to do with like sound business decisions or anything, you know? I mean, like if, because I've always said too, like we didn't really even know how to make a movie. That's
Right.
that's what's funny. I mean, I think about us trying to like stretch it out. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I'm talking between segments.
Yep.
I'm like, that thing could have been like 15 minutes long and been banger. Instead, we tried to stretch it because, you know, you had to stretch it to like a 45-minute movie, you know, and so we're like, let's talk about the athletes. And, you know, it's funny thinking back about like the need to get, in order to get the movie on tour, you had to make it 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't, and if you, funny enough, if you think about it, YouTube was 1 year old when we put that trailer out, you
I mean,
know?
yeah, we were putting shit out on MySpace, like,
Oh yeah. Totally. I
yep.
forgot about that. Lipstick Films MySpace. I should pull that up.
Yeah.
Um yeah. No, actually that's funny because I remember Facebook, that was still when Facebook was only for college kids and I didn't go to college, and you guys were all like, dude, we've got this Facebook thing, and I'm like, what's that? And you're like, you don't go to college. I was like, oh, I guess I
Cool.
can't sign up for it. Sorry. Um yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. But I mean, for sure, like once we, I don't know, what are, do you have any fond memories of that experience of filming, or like, honestly, I've gone back and watched some of those segments with some of the skiing in there, and like, there's some cool shit that went down
Hmm.
that I'm curious what resonates in your head still after all these years. Cause I mean, that's like almost going on almost 20 years ago. Like what, I mean, it was so grassroots, dude. I mean, you're
Yeah.
literally living on my couch, and we like credit carded like a editing machine and a camera, which was like the dumbest thing ever. We're
Yeah.
like making this movie, but some of the skiing I felt we captured, like, I don't know, like what still rings in your brain, like when you think back, or anything that had to do with that movie?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some standouts. You know, I think like Jonas, um, was definitely, I wish that I almost feel like I wish that we had, like whatever better equipment or like more money or something to like do him justice. Like some of the stuff that did go down was like so rad, but it was almost hard to do it justice with like one camera, you know, just super basic stuff, right? But I mean, I remember skiing with Jonas and just being like, dude, this guy is literally on another planet in terms of like what he was doing and how fast he was doing it. And he was a super well-rounded skier, right? Like he was crushing big mountain lines, but then he was also doing super cool stuff in the park and like just a rad dude, like just wanted to have a good time. That was probably the biggest standout for me. Just like the hours that we put in with all those people. Like there was some really good people around. I mean, all of them really. Like I really appreciate all those folks, but like Austin and um, I spent a lot of time with Ty out, like with like staying at his family's house in Tahoe, and um, Shell. Just like a solid crew, and a lot of just hours of driving and pushing to get stuff done. Because it was all DIY, right? Like we didn't have anybody else setting the stuff up for us. We were doing start to finish. So if we didn't have tickets or passes somewhere, like we were figuring out where we could hike because we didn't have sleds, we didn't have any money. So yeah, it was a lot of work. And of course, hindsight's 2020. Like there's a lot of things that we could have done differently probably to save ourselves some headaches, but it was rad.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's cool to hear a couple of those names. I think in you mentioned Jonas Karhuma, Finnish telemark skier that I mean, yeah, you think like that it's funny cuz I remember basically Telemark Skier magazine had photos of him, and I don't remember how we might have emailed the photographer Taro Repo, I think is how you pronounce his name,
Mm-hmm.
who had shot these photos, and they were like cool photos. Like I remember us being like, "Wow, this is legit. Like, where's this guy?" And when he came over, it was like kind of a different, like not only the level of skiing, but just like, he showed up. Remember, he had like a signature pole. Do you remember that?
A lollipop.
He had like his own pole. Yeah, totally. And we were like, wait, you have your own ski pole, like with your name on it? Like, it just was like this next level thing because he was a sponsored skier in a different level than we were used to seeing. But yeah, and like when he threw down big mountain lines, like it was next level. And then that might have been Cody, you still there?
Yeah.
I might have I might have just lost the image.
Um,
Tell me if you can hear. Oh, can you? Oh, you can, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
I just can't see you. Oh, okay. I just can't see you for some reason. I'm not sure why.
It's a bummer, man.
Anyways, it's all good. No worries. But I was just gonna say that. Yeah, that might have been one of the the first times that a Switch 900 was filmed, and maybe you can verify that. I don't know, but I remember that in that era, it was such a big deal for us to try to capture like these things that we hadn't seen before in other videos,
Right.
And I think I remember you telling me that. You're like, dude, he did a Switch 900, and it's like, no way. Did you get it? And then it was,
Yeah.
do you remember that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, and we finally got that movie together, and like I think, yeah, just before we hop off, I wanted to talk a little bit about the tour. It's like that tour was wild too, and I think about kind of putting that whole thing together was, like you said, there in hindsight, it's funny because I think about how crazy that tour was because I was at that point, you were doing all the filming, all the editing, you're trying to figure all that out. I'm trying to figure out how to like, quote unquote, sell it to, I'm basically going to my personal sponsors and saying, hey, like we're making this movie and, I was determined to do a 50 city tour. I don't know where I got that number, but I think it probably just, I think a lot of it came from I knew Powder Horse were doing like a lot of tour dates, and I always was like, no, we have to one up those guys. Like we gotta do more. And that movie, what was funny, it's like funny thinking back because here we've never made a movie. Probably no one should trust us like with sponsorship dollars, because we don't even have like there's no metrics to like sell this thing.
Right.
And somehow I talked them into some cash that, I mean, it wasn't enough. Like you said, like we didn't have a budget to film.
No.
So, I mean, it probably just went to pay some stuff back and whatever. And then I think I'll always be proud of the fact that they gave us a Jeep Commander to drive for part of the tour. Cause that was like, that felt pretty legit, even though we had no money.
Yep.
But it had a Rosignol logo on it, and man, we drove that at least all over the West Coast. Because I remember I found some pictures the other day of you sleeping in the Commander at some random rest stop in the middle of nowhere.
And like Oregon.
And yep. And that seems kind of how it was, man. And we just cooked. I think you did the whole West Coast, and then I don't remember if I just did the East Coast on my own, or I can't remember.
I didn't.
I need to go back, look at. Yeah, I think I just did that on my own. But we used to do shows in weird places, man. And the other thing about that tour I remember is like we thought we had to rent. Well, I'm dragging you into this. I thought we had to rent theaters. I thought that's how you did it.
Yep.
And we had some good showings, like we had some good showings, and we had there was a couple like legit nobody showed up. I think I'll always remember Corvallis, Oregon. And we got there, rented the whole auditorium at this university, which universities were usually pretty good. And I'll always remember that because we showed up, set up, and literally no one showed up. Not one person. And so we packed up, and I literally think it cost like $400 to rent this place. And it was just like, okay, this is bad, pack up. And then I think we just we were in two separate cars that time, because I remember just sleeping in the car like on this rainy Oregon night, just going, oh my God, I just lost $400. Like,
Yeah.
that's insane. So, I mean, I started doing it a little bit different later on, but I was going to say, man, like when we were making those movies, that was a big deal. Like you said, we were trying to just do our own thing. I don't think we really cared a whole lot about what people thought. And I think that movie tour, that's what I always remember too, is the response to it. Because doing 50 cities with that movie, I mean, people weren't expecting us to show that kind of movie when they showed up. They thought they were seeing, we made our own little PR machine, like sent press releases. We were in the newspaper. We were doing radio. We had to learn all that stuff. And I don't know. You tell me, man, what do you remember about people's reaction to that thing?
Oh, man. I remember the best one for me personally was in, I think it was Dillon or Frisco's. Like, I think it might have been the Dillon Dam Brewery. where we showed it there. We showed it
Yep.
at Sudbury there, and I remember sitting next to some guy, and he didn't know who we were, and he was just fuming pissed about this movie, and he was like, "That is not telemark skiing," and I was like, "Fuck yeah, exactly." Like some crusty old dude at the bar, you know, I was like, "This isn't fucking telemark skiing," and I'm like, "That's cool, man. You are not the person that we need to impress right now," you know. And it was just funny, like, because that felt very validating to me, because it was kind of like, you know, I think whether we said it or not, or, you know, we were kind of like a, you know, in this kind of fuck the man attitude. And not that it did us any good, like it, you know, it's not like it helped in our, you know, on the business side of things, but it was cool to see that, like, we pissed somebody off, you know, like some old dude. Because I think that's really what, like, underlying everything was just like we were fed up with, you know, things, and that is certainly not to take away from any of, like, you know, what, like, Josh and Nat and, like, Ben and Max, like, I mean, in terms of the quality, you know, like the filmmaking that a lot of those guys put out was awesome. Like, it was really good, and the skiing was great, and the people were great. It just wasn't, you know, like, there was no, like, fringe representation, and that was us. Like, that's, you know, for better or worse.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I think we definitely took it over the edge a little bit. Like I look at, like, soundtrack stuff, or, I mean, it's like I said before, it's like, I think we were so focused on fringe is probably a good word, is I think we personally felt like we didn't really fit in, you know, the stuff we were interested in on a personal level. Like, hey, let's go do bomb drops, or, you know, slide a pavilion, or go whatever, you know, and that didn't quite fit in with some of the other stuff, because we all, you know, and I agree, Bones movies, Nats movies, you know, Dolans and Mancini, all that stuff, like, I felt like they were really like those building blocks to kind of, like, you know, the quality still, it's so cool to go back and watch what they were doing. But I think, you know, we also had access to digital cameras, and I think people like Nat Ross taught us, like, oh, you can get a digital camera, you can go make a movie. And this was like the first time, you know, like, you know, if we were sitting around watching unparalleled movies and going, oh, that's on 16 millimeter. Like, I mean, I know I wasn't sitting around going, oh, well, let's go buy that Bolex camera and make it happen. I mean, it was like the threshold got a little bit easier to start putting stuff out. But yeah, I do kind of laugh at some of the soundtrack. Like, you know, we used yeah, I was going to point out too, you know, I look back, like, one of my favorite things was finding Neon Trees, like local band in Salt Lake, who now is like, you know, mega band, you know, and, you know, we use them in that movie for Jonas's part, and I think another one, and they were like playing, like, you know, like little events we had, and it was cool. We had to learn a lot of that stuff, but then there was some super aggressive music, and I think we thought it was, like, funny. Like, we were really trying to piss people off, which is so ridiculous, because we're like, you guys should give us money to go on tour. And then we're like, here's a metal song to Telemark skiing on rails. And they're just like, what the hell are you guys doing? This doesn't even make any sense to what we're doing, you know? So,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. I don't know. Anything else you want to throw down memory lane before we hop off there, bro?
Man, I don't know. That's a whole nother few episodes right there, probably, right?
Yeah. No, I think I just kind of wanted to document a little bit of your background, and sort of start tying some of those pieces together. There's so much of that cool film background that I think you were tied into, and I think Lipstick was a cool just, yeah, cool sort of end point, you know, like where we were able to kind of create something and goes to show you that kids that don't know how to do anything can do something. I think that was kind of the moral of the story.
For sure.
And definitely taught me a lot on a personal level. So I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it was hard. But it was, you know, we were young and dumb, and it was like, yeah, this is what we need to do. So we did it. Can't take that away from us.
love it, dude. Never. And you're just going to have to watch that crap on YouTube the rest of your life. So, well, much love, dude. I appreciate you coming on and chopping it up with me for a little bit. And hopefully I'll drag you out of your hole again at some point and we can talk about some other stuff. I love it. All right, man. Talk to you later.
All right. Later days.
Peace.